A street girl ran to the patrol car, breathless, asking for help. She said a man was trapped in an abandoned house, screaming for help. The missing billionaire was there, saved by the only one who had the courage to listen. If this beautiful story of overcoming and love interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you are watching from. The Phoenix sun beat down on the asphalt of Union Square with cruel intensity that March afternoon. Among the empty benches and dried trees, a small figure moved with the agility of someone who had learned to survive on the streets. Lily was only 7 years old, but her eyes carried the bitter wisdom of someone who had grown up too quickly. Her bare feet knew every stone, every hole, every corner of that square that had become her home since everything changed. The girl clutched a piece of day-old bread she'd gotten from the bakery on the corner. Her stomach had been growling for hours, but she knew she needed to save some for the night. It was like this every day. Calculate, plan, resist. Her torn clothes told stories no child should live, and her tangled hair danced in the hot city wind. On the other side of the city, in the wealthy neighborhoods of Oakwood Hills, a completely different reality was unfolding. Theodore Reynolds adjusted his Italian tie in front of his closet mirror, preparing for another day commanding his business empire. At 42, he was considered one of the richest men in Arizona, owner of a construction company that built skyscrapers across the country. His mansion was a modern palace, surrounded by impeccable gardens and a privileged view of Camelback Mountain. Theodore had no idea that at that very moment, two of his closest employees were plotting against him. Richard Andrews, his financial director of 5 years, and Marcus Sanders, head of operations, had discovered a secret multi-million-dollar investment Theodore was planning to make. It was an urban development project that could be worth billions, and they wanted their share. Meanwhile, in the square, Lily noticed something strange. During the previous night, when she was sheltering among cardboard boxes in the alley behind the abandoned house, she had heard something different. They weren't the usual night sounds, passing cars, meowing cats, distant sirens. It was a human, voice muffled, that seemed to come from inside the ruined building that everyone believed had been empty for years. The girl had tried to approach, but fear paralyzed her. The house had a haunted appearance, with its boarded windows and vegetation taking over the walls. However, the screams persisted throughout the night, interspersed with long periods of silence that left her even more restless. Theodore left home that morning without knowing it would be the last time he would step into his mansion as a free man. His driver, John, was waiting with the gleaming black Mercedes-Benz. During the drive to the office, Theodore reviewed the documents for a confidential project. It was an international partnership that could revolutionize the civil construction market in the United States, but needed to be kept in absolute secrecy until the right moment. Richard and Marcus were already at the office when Theodore arrived. They greeted him with their usual smiles, but behind their eyes was a coldness that Theodore failed to perceive. They had planned everything down to the smallest detail. They knew Theodore usually worked late, and that on Thursdays he dismissed his driver to drive his own car to the gym. The meeting proceeded normally. Theodore presented the figures for the last quarter, discussed new contracts and approved investments. Richard took meticulous notes, while Marcus asked precise questions. To any outside observer, it was just another workday at a successful company. Lily spent the day wandering around the city, trying to find something to eat. She visited the farmers' market in Arcadia, where some vendors sometimes gave her bruised fruit. She stopped at restaurant doors, hoping someone would take pity and offer her a plate of food. But what bothered her most was the memory of that voice in the early morning. She couldn't get out of her head the feeling that someone needed help. In the afternoon, when she returned to the square, the screams began again. This time Lily was certain there was someone trapped inside that house. The voice was a man's, and he seemed to be calling for help. The girl felt her heart racing. She needed to do something, but who would believe her? She was just a street girl, invisible in the eyes of society. Theodore was finishing his workday when Richard appeared in his office with a worried expression. He said an urgent problem had come up at one of the construction sites on the outskirts of the city, something that required the boss's immediate presence. Marcus confirmed the information, adding that it would be better to check personally to avoid delays in the schedule. Without suspecting anything, Theodore grabbed his car keys and followed the two men. The journey took more than an hour, passing through neighborhoods increasingly distant from downtown. When they finally stopped, they were in an abandoned industrial area, where old houses mixed with deactivated warehouses. It was there that everything changed. Richard and Marcus revealed their true intentions. They wanted information about the international project, banking passwords, and confidential documents. Theodore, shocked by the betrayal, tried to resist, but soon realized he was in an inescapable trap. The two men took him to an abandoned house near the square where Lily lived. It was a strategic location, isolated enough not to draw attention, but close to the city to facilitate their activities. They locked Theodore in a back room, nailed boards to the door, and put a new padlock to ensure he wouldn't escape. While Theodore screamed for help in the darkness of that improvised captivity, Lily was just a few meters away, trying to sleep among her cardboard boxes. The screams reached her more clearly than ever. This time there was no doubt. Someone was really trapped in there. The girl stayed awake all night, listening to the desperate pleas coming from the house. Her childish mind struggled to understand what was happening. She knew she needed to do something, but she also knew that no one would take her seriously. How many times had she tried to ask for help and been ignored? How many times had she been driven away as if she were a nuisance? But that voice in the darkness touched her in a different way. Perhaps because she herself knew despair, the feeling of being lost and helpless. Perhaps because deep down she knew that saving that person was also a way of saving herself. When the first ray of sunlight illuminated the square, Lily had already made her decision. She couldn't ignore those screams. Even if no one believed her, even if she was rejected once again, she had to try. After all, a life was at stake, and perhaps she was the only person in the world who could make a difference. The dawn brought with it a determination that Lily had never felt before. The girl got up from her improvised cardboard bed, shook the dust from her clothes, and walked toward the abandoned house. The screams had ceased during the night, but she knew someone was still in there. She needed to be sure before seeking help. She cautiously approached the ruined building. The peeling walls covered with ivy told the story of years of abandonment, but there was something different. The boards nailed to the back door looked new, and the padlock gleamed under the morning sunlight. Lily pressed her ear against the wood and heard weak, broken breathing. On the other side of the wall, Theodore Reynolds was living the worst nightmare of his life. He had spent the night trying to free himself from the ropes that bound his wrists, resulting only in injuries that burned like fire. His throat was dry, his lips cracked, and hunger was beginning to consume his strength. But it was despair that tortured him most, the feeling of being completely isolated from the world, forgotten in a place where no one would ever find him. During the night, he had screamed until he was hoarse, hoping someone would hear him. Now, with the arrival of day, a part of him was beginning to accept that this might be his end. Theodore thought about his life, about all the people he had neglected in his relentless pursuit of success. How many times had he passed homeless, people without even looking at them? How many times had he ignored requests for help? Meanwhile, Richard and Marcus were executing the second part of their plan. They had broken into Theodore's mansion during the night, using keys that Richard had copied weeks before. They searched the private office, the safe, all the computers, desperately looking for the international project documents. But Theodore was more cautious than they imagined. The most important files were stored in a location they couldn't discover. Marcus was getting nervous. The plan had been to keep Theodore for just a few hours, long enough to get the information and disappear with the money. But without access to the documents, they would need more time, and that meant a greater risk of being discovered. Lily knew she needed to act quickly. She had tried to wake up some homeless people sleeping near the square, but they ignored or drove her away. She tried to talk to the bakery owner, but he was too busy to pay attention to a dirty, poorly dressed child. Despair was beginning to take hold of her when she spotted a police car parked near the bus stop. Her heart raced. Police officers always made her nervous. She had learned to hide from them, as they were often seen as a problem for street children. But this situation was different. Someone was counting on her even without knowing of her existence. With hesitant steps, Lily approached the patrol car. The two police officers, Sergeant Charles Mitchell and Officer Fernanda Silva, were drinking coffee and chatting about the day's routine. Charles, a 50-year-old man with 25 years of experience on the streets, had already seen everything in life. Fernanda, younger, with only 3 years on the force, still maintained a special sensitivity for cases involving children. When Lily timidly knocked on the car window, the two officers looked at each other. It was common for children to approach asking for money or food, but there was something different in this girl's eyes. Her eyes conveyed urgency, not need. "Please, officer," Lily said with a trembling voice. "There's a man trapped in the old house back there. He's screaming for help." Charles looked in the direction the girl was pointing and frowned. He had known that house for years. It had been abandoned since he was just a rookie officer. "Little girl, that house has been empty for a long time. Are you sure about what you're saying?" "Yes, sir, I listened all night. He's asking for help," Lily insisted, her small hands trembling with nervousness. Fernanda studied the child's expression. She had worked with domestic violence cases and knew how to recognize when someone was telling the truth, even when the story seemed unlikely. "What's your name?" "Lily." "Lily, do you sleep around here?" The girl nodded, embarrassed. "Over there, in the alley, in the boxes," Charles sighed. Part of him wanted to simply dismiss the child and continue with the patrol. Cases like this were usually false alarms, products of imagination or some trauma, but Fernanda was already getting out of the car. "Let's take a look," she said to her partner. "It doesn't cost anything to check." The three walked toward the dark, abandoned house, Lily in front guiding the way. The sun was stronger now and heat was beginning to form small waves of vapor above the asphalt. When they got close to the building, Charles had to admit that something was different. The boards on the door really did look new, and there were fresh footprints in the dirt around the house. "Wait here," Charles said to Lily, approaching the boarded door. He put his ear to the wood and remained silent for a few seconds. Nothing. He was about to walk away when he heard a weak groan, almost inaudible. His blood froze. There really was someone in there. "Fernanda, call for backup. Now." While Fernanda spoke on the radio, Charles continued trying to make contact with whoever was on the other side of the wall. "Hello, is anyone there? Phoenix Police Department." The voice that answered was weak but carried a desperate relief. "I'm here. Please, get me out of here." Theodore could hardly believe what he was hearing. Human voices coming from outside. Someone had finally found him. Gathering his last strength, he shouted as loud as he could, "I'm trapped! They locked me in here!" Charles felt adrenaline rush through his veins. This was no joke. There really was someone in captivity. He began examining the nailed boards, looking for the best way to remove them without proper tools. Lily watched everything with wide eyes. She had done it. The police believed her and found the man. For the first time in a long time, she felt useful, important. She wasn't just another invisible street child. She was someone who had made a difference. Backup arrived in less than 10 minutes. 3 patrol cars and an ambulance positioned themselves around the abandoned house. Lieutenant Robert Suarez took command of the operation, organizing the men to safely remove the boards. There was a possibility that it was a kidnapping, which made the situation even more delicate. While the police worked to open the door, Richard and Marcus were on the other side of the city, still searching for the documents in Theodore's mansion. Marcus checked his phone and noticed several missed calls from clients and company employees. It was strange that Theodore wasn't answering, but they had calculated it would take at least a day for anyone to notice his disappearance. Back at the abandoned house, the boards finally gave way. The door opened with a sinister creak, revealing a dark and moldy interior. Charles entered first, followed by other officers with flashlights. They found Theodore in a corner of the back room, sitting on the damp floor, with his hands tied, and the appearance of someone who had been through hell. "Jesus Christ," muttered Charles, running to help him. Theodore was conscious, but visibly dehydrated and debilitated. His expensive clothes were dirty and wrinkled, and there were red marks on his wrists where the ropes had cut into his skin. When he saw the police, his eyes filled with tears of relief. The paramedics entered immediately, checking Theodore's vital signs and preparing him for transport to the hospital. Meanwhile, Charles tried to obtain basic information about what had happened. "Sir, can you tell us your name?" "Theodore Reynolds," he replied with a hoarse voice. Charles felt his stomach turn. He knew that name. Everyone in Phoenix knew it. He was one of the richest businessmen in the city, owner of one of the largest construction companies in the state. The case had just become much more complicated. "Who did this to you?" My employees. Richard and Marcus, they brought me here. They wanted information, passwords." Theodore spoke with difficulty, but each word was crucial for the investigation. While Theodore was being taken to the ambulance, Charles looked for Lily. He found her leaning against a tree, watching all the activity with a mixture of fascination and fear. He approached her with a softer expression. "Lily, you saved this man's life. If it weren't for you, no one would have found him." The girl lowered her eyes, not used to receiving compliments. He was screaming. I couldn't leave him there. Charles felt a tightness in his heart. This child, who had probably never received help from anyone, had risked everything to save a stranger. "You're a very brave girl." The ambulance left with Theodore, followed by 2 patrol cars that would escort him to the hospital. Charles and Fernanda stayed at the scene, coordinating the forensics team that was already on its way. The house had become a crime scene, and every detail would be important to capture those responsible. Lily remained there watching the activity. She didn't know yet that that moment would change her life forever. She didn't know that the man she had saved would come to see her as a guardian angel. And most importantly, she didn't know that in a few hours her story would become known throughout the country, transforming an invisible girl into the heroine who touched the heart of a nation. At Phoenix Medical Center, Theodore Reynolds was being treated in the emergency unit. The doctors confirmed severe dehydration, superficial injuries to his wrists, and a general state of traumatic stress, but nothing life-threatening. While receiving IV fluids and medication, his mind couldn't disconnect from the image of the girl who had witnessed his rescue. Dr. Henry Adams, the doctor responsible for his care, was asking routine questions when Theodore interrupted him. "Doctor, the girl who found me. Is she okay? Does she have somewhere to stay?" "Girl, I don't know what girl you're talking about." Theodore closed his eyes, trying to organize his thoughts. His memories were confused, but he was sure he had seen a small child near the police officers when he was removed from the house. "It was a street girl who found me. Without her, I would be—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The reality of what could have happened hit him like a punch to the stomach. If that child hadn't heard his screams, if she hadn't had the courage to seek help, he would certainly not be there. Meanwhile, at the police station, detectives Marcus Rivera and Anna Cooper were beginning their investigations. Marcus, an experienced 45-year-old man, had worked on kidnapping cases before, but never involving such a well-known personality. Anna, his partner for 3 years, had a special intuition for unraveling motivations behind crimes. "I need to better understand this story about the employees," said Marcus, leafing through the first reports. 2 trusted men betraying their boss this way. There must be something very valuable behind it. Anna agreed. "I'll start investigating the background of these 2, Richard Andrews and Marcus Sanders. If they knew Theodore's routine well enough to plan the kidnapping, they must have access to privileged information." At that moment, Richard and Marcus were in panic. They had received a call from a company employee informing them that the boss had not shown up for an important morning meeting and no one could contact him. To make matters worse, rumors were beginning to circulate that an ambulance had been seen in the region where they were keeping Theodore prisoner. "Marcus, we need to get out of here," said Richard, nervously pacing the room in Theodore's mansion. "If they discovered where he was, it's only a matter of time before they reach us." "Calm down, we still don't know anything. It could be coincidence." Marcus tried to maintain his composure, but his hands were shaking as he continued looking for the documents. "We need to find this information. It's our only chance to get out of this situation." What they didn't know was that at that exact moment, an investigation team was already analyzing the security cameras of buildings near Theodore's company, tracking the movements of all employees in the last 48 hours. Back at the hospital, Theodore insisted on obtaining information about Lily. He called his lawyer, Dr. Frank Matthews, and asked him to contact the police to find out about the child. "Theodore, you need to focus on your recovery now," said Frank, an elegant 60-year-old man who had worked with the Reynolds family for decades. "Let me handle the legal and bureaucratic aspects." "Frank, you don't understand. That girl saved my life. She has nothing, lives on the street, and was the only person who cared about my screams. I need to do something for her." Frank was surprised by Theodore's emotional intensity. In all the years of acquaintance, he had never seen the businessman show such concern for someone outside his professional circle. "All right, I'll check on her situation. But first, we need to resolve this issue with the kidnappers." Lily had returned to her corner in the square, but couldn't concentrate on anything else. All the rescue activity had attracted curious onlookers, and some adults who previously ignored her now looked at her with interest. She didn't like this attention. She preferred her usual invisibility. Sergeant Charles, who had been made responsible for following the case, returned to the square in the afternoon to look for the girl. He found her sitting on a bench, watching the movement with her large, expressive eyes. "Lily, can I sit here with you?" The girl nodded timidly. Charles sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "You did a very important thing today. The man you saved is in the hospital and the doctors say he's going to be fine." "He was very thirsty," said Lily quietly. "I heard him asking for water." Charles felt a lump in his throat. "Lily, where is your family, your parents?" The girl lowered her head. "My mum disappeared. I lived with her in a small house, but one day she left and never came back. The lady who looked after the house kicked me out." "How long ago did this happen?" "I don't know. Many days. I count by the sun." Charles made some notes in his notebook. This child needed protection. She couldn't continue living on the streets. "Lily, would you like to have a place to live? With food every day and a bed to sleep in?" The girl's eyes lit up for a moment, but then dimmed again. "People don't like me. They say I'm dirty and that I bother them." "But you're a very special girl. You proved that today." At that moment, Charles received a call. It was Dr. Frank Matthews, Theodore's lawyer, asking about the child who had alerted the police. Charles explained Lily's situation and was surprised when Frank said that Theodore would like to meet her personally. "Mr. Reynolds wants to thank the girl. Would it be possible to bring her to the hospital?" Charles looked at Lily, who had heard part of the conversation. "Lily, the man you saved wants to meet you. He wants to thank you. Would you like to see him?" The girl was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. No one had ever wanted to meet her or thank her for anything. "Won't he be angry with me?" "Why would he be angry? You saved his life." Charles obtained authorization to take Lily to the hospital. During the journey in the patrol car, the girl remained quiet, looking out the window at the busy streets of Phoenix. It was the first time she had ridden in a car, and every detail of the city seemed new to her eyes. At the hospital, Theodore was anxious. He had showered, changed clothes, and felt physically better, but his mind was completely focused on the girl who had saved him. When Charles entered the room, followed by Lily, Theodore felt tears well up in his eyes. The child was even thinner and more fragile than he had imagined. Her torn clothes and bare feet contrasted dramatically with the clean and organized hospital environment. But it was her eyes that impressed him most, intelligent and brave eyes that had seen much more than any child should see. "Lily," said Theodore with a choked voice, "come here, please." The girl approached hesitantly, stopping, a few meters from the bed. Theodore extended his hand to her. "You saved my life. I don't know how to thank you for something like that." Lily looked at the extended hand and, after a few seconds, touched it timidly with her small and dirty fingers. The contrast between their hands was striking to everyone in the room. Theodore's well-cared-for and soft hands against the girl's dry and injured hands. "Were you scared?" asked Lily. "Very scared," Theodore answered honestly. "I thought no one would find me." I get scared sometimes too, when it rains a lot and there's nowhere to hide. Those words hit Theodore like a revelation. This child knew fear just as well as he had known it in those terrible hours of captivity. But the difference was that she lived with that fear every day and yet had found the courage to save him. Lily, would you like to have a house? A real home? The girl looked at him, curiously. What do you mean? I'd like to take care of you if you want, of course. We can provide everything, a house, food, clothes, school. Charles intervened. Mr. Reynolds, there are legal procedures that need to be followed for this kind of situation. Then let's follow all the necessary procedures, said Theodore, firmly. Frank, can you handle this? Frank, who had been observing the entire scene, nodded. I'll start the proceedings immediately, but it will be a long and complex process. Lily didn't completely understand what was happening, but she sensed that something important was being decided about her future. For the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope growing in her chest. At that moment, Anna Cooper called the hospital. They had identified Richard and Marcus on the security cameras and discovered that they were still in Theodore's mansion. A police operation was being organized to arrest them. Mr. Reynolds, in a few hours we'll have those responsible in custody, informed Charles. You'll need to provide a detailed statement as soon as you feel better. Theodore nodded, but his attention remained completely focused on Lily. Where will you stay tonight? In the square, in the boxes, she answered naturally. No, not today, said Theodore categorically. Charles, is it possible to arrange temporary shelter for her, just until we resolve the legal situation? Charles knew of some institutions that could temporarily take in Lily. I'll make some contacts. Meanwhile, at Theodore's mansion, Richard and Marcus had finally found part of the documents they were looking for. They were about to flee when surrounded by police. The operation was quick and efficient. The two were arrested without resistance, carrying with them the evidence of their betrayal. Back at the hospital, Theodore held Lily's small hand and made a silent promise. This girl had given him back not only his life, but also the humanity he had lost over the years, and he would do everything in his power to repay this gift in the most dignified way possible. The news spread like wildfire. In less than 24 hours, the story of Theodore Reynolds' kidnapping and his rescue by a street girl was in all newspapers, news sites, and social media across the country. The image of Lily next to the police officers, with her bare feet and determined look, became a symbol of courage and humanity. Reporter Julia Fernandez from Channel 12 News was the first to arrive at the hospital. Experienced in covering police cases, she immediately recognized the human potential of that story. When she secured an exclusive interview with Theodore, she didn't expect the businessman to be so direct about his feelings regarding the girl. That child taught me more about life in 5 minutes than I learned in 42 years, said Theodore before the cameras, still with bandages on his wrists. She didn't know me, didn't know who I was, but heard my screams and decided to act. Meanwhile, I spent my entire life ignoring screams like hers. The interview aired on the local evening news and within hours was being replicated nationally. The contrast between the billionaire businessman and the street girl touched the hearts of Americans in a way no one expected. Lily, who had spent her first night in a temporary shelter run by the Sisters of St. Teresa congregation, didn't fully comprehend the dimension of what was happening. Sister Grace, a 70-year-old nun who ran the institution, tried to explain to the girl why so many people wanted to talk to her. Lily, you did something very special. You saved a life. People were moved by your courage. But I just heard him screaming, replied Lily, playing with the cloth doll she had received from the nuns. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, my dear, many people passed by that square and did nothing. You were different. At the police station, the interrogations of Richard Andrews and Marcus Sanders revealed the extent of their betrayal. Richard confessed that for months he had been copying confidential company information, preparing to start his own business. When they discovered Theodore's international project, they saw an opportunity to get quick money. We didn't want to hurt him, insisted Richard during his statement. The idea was just to scare him enough for him to give us the information. And then what? We would release him and disappear from the country. Detective Robert Mays, responsible for the case, didn't believe the two men's version. The evidence showed careful and premeditated planning, and the state in which Theodore was found indicated they were willing to go much further. Marcus, in turn, tried to minimize his participation. It was all Richard's idea. I only helped because he said it would be quick and easy. Then why didn't you free him when you couldn't get the information? Marcus remained silent. The truth was that both had panicked and didn't know how to get out of the situation without being discovered. Meanwhile, in Phoenix society, Lily's story provoked various reactions. At the country club, where Theodore usually had lunch on Sundays, comments ranged from admiration to skepticism. "This is marketing, folks," said Roberta Silvers, wife of a local industrial magnate. "Soon, Theodore will be taking photos with the girl to improve the company's image." "Don't be so cynical, Roberta," retorted Helen Monroe, organizer of several charity events in the city. "I saw his interview. The man was genuinely moved." Dr. Frank Matthews worked intensely on the legal procedures for Lily's guardianship. The adoption process would be long and complex, but Theodore had made it clear that he wanted to do everything correctly, following all legal procedures. "The juvenile court will want to do a complete evaluation," explained Frank to his client. "Your financial situation is not a problem, obviously, but they will analyze your motivations, emotional stability, ability to care for a child." "And how long does that take?" "It could be months, maybe a year or more." Theodore was frustrated. "And Lily? Will she continue in the shelter all that time?" "It's the safest way, Theodore. The state needs to ensure it's in the child's best interest." At that moment, Theodore made a decision that surprised even Frank. "I want to make a significant donation to the shelter where she is, not to influence the process, but to ensure that she and the other children have the best possible conditions." News of the $2 million donation to the St. Teresa congregation spread quickly. Sister Grace almost fainted when she received the call from Frank communicating the donation. $2 million? Mr. Matthews, are you sure? Absolutely. Mr. Reynolds wants the money to be used to improve the facilities, hire more staff, buy equipment, everything to ensure that the children have an even better environment. The donation generated even more media interest. Other businessmen began to question why they had never paid attention to the city's charitable institutions. Some, inspired by Theodore's example, also began making donations. Lily was adapting to life in the shelter. For the first time, she had 3 guaranteed meals a day, a warm place to sleep and other children to play with. But she couldn't forget the man she had saved and who now wanted to take care of her. "Sister Grace, will Mr. Theodore really be my father? God willing, and if it's best for you, yes. He's rich, isn't he? Very rich. Won't he get tired of me?" Sister Grace sat beside Lily and hugged her affectionately. "My child, sometimes God puts people in our lives for very special reasons. I think you and Mr. Theodore needed each other." The nun's statement would prove prophetic. Theodore, who had been discharged from the hospital, spent every day at the shelter visiting Lily. Initially, the visits were formal and uncomfortable. He didn't know how to interact with a child, especially one who had lived experiences so different from his own. But gradually, a genuine connection began to form. Theodore discovered that Lily was extremely intelligent and observant. Despite never having attended school, she knew how to read some words she had learned on her own, observing signs and posters on the street. "How did you learn to read this?" asked Theodore, showing her a children's book. "I looked at the letters, on buses, and asked people. Some explained to me." Theodore was impressed with the girl's determination. He decided that, while they waited for the adoption process, he would start giving her private lessons at the shelter itself. The study sessions became the highlight of the day for both of them. Theodore rediscovered the joy of teaching and learning, while Lily absorbed knowledge with impressive thirst. Math, English, history, geography, she wanted to know everything. "Why do people get rich and others stay poor?" asked Lily during a lesson about society. The question caught Theodore off guard. It's complicated, Lily. Sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's hard work, sometimes it's injustice. How did you get rich? By working very hard, but also having opportunities that many people don't have. And me, will I get rich too? Theodore smiled. You're already rich, Lily, rich in courage, in kindness, in intelligence. Money is only one part of wealth. Meanwhile, the legal process was slowly advancing. The social worker responsible for the case, Dr. Carla Menendez, made regular visits to evaluate the interaction between Theodore and Lily. Her observations were consistently positive. It's evident that a genuine bond is forming between them, she wrote in one of her reports. Mr. Reynolds demonstrates patience, affection, and a real commitment to the child's well-being. Lily, in turn, shows signs of emotional recovery and accelerated development. But not everything was easy. The media exposure also brought criticism and ill-intentioned people. Some questioned Theodore's motivations, suggesting it was just a marketing ploy to improve his image after the kidnapping. Time magazine published a cover story with the title, "The Billionaire and the Girl, Redemption," or Marketing, raising questions about Theodore's sincerity. The article included statements from supposed behavioral experts, questioning whether such a radical personality change was possible. Theodore was furious about the article, but Lily, who was learning to read better and better, made an observation that reassured him. "Mr. Theodore, do the people who wrote this know me? Do they know how you treat me?" "No, Lily, they don't know us." "Then it doesn't matter what they say, right?" The simplicity and wisdom of the girl once again impressed Theodore. She was right. What mattered was the reality they were building together, not the opinions of strangers. The most emotional moment came 3 months after the rescue. Dr. Carla Menendez communicated that the process was advancing positively and that soon Theodore could have temporary custody of Lily. This meant she could live with him while they awaited the finalization of the adoption. "Lily, would you like to live in Mr. Theodore's house?" asked the social worker. The girl looked at Theodore, who was holding his breath, waiting for the answer. "If he wants to teach me to swim in the pool, he said he has," she replied with a shy smile. Theodore laughed, feeling his heart overflow. "With happiness. Of course I want to. And I'll teach you anything you want to learn." At that moment, they both knew their lives had changed forever. The cold, calculating businessman had discovered paternal love, while the abandoned girl had found not just a home but a family. The story that had begun with screams of despair was transforming into a symphony of hope and new beginnings. Lily's first morning in Theodore's mansion was magical and frightening at the same time. She woke up in a bed that was bigger than all. The space where she slept in the square, covered by soft sheets that smelled like flowers. The window of the room offered a stunning view of Camelback Mountain, painted by the first rays of the sun. Theodore had spent weeks preparing for this moment. He hired a decorator specializing in children's rooms, but asked for everything to be done with simplicity and good taste. He didn't want to overwhelm Lily with too much luxury all at once. The room had walls in soft shades of blue and white, a bookshelf full of children's books, a study desk, a closet full of new clothes, and in the center a canopy bed that seemed to come out of a fairy tale. "Good morning, Princess," said Theodore, knocking lightly on the door. "May I come in?" Lily was sitting on the edge of the bed, still wearing the new pajamas she had received, observing the room as if it were a dream. "Mr. Theodore, is all this really mine?" "All yours. And you don't need to call me Mr. Theodore. You can just call me Theodore, or if you want, you can call me Dad." The word Dad echoed in the room like a promise. Lily had never called anyone that. Her biological mother had never mentioned her father, and she had grown up believing it was something other children had, but she didn't. "Can I think about it a bit?" she asked timidly. "Of course you can. There's no rush for anything." Theodore had hired Mrs. Lucy, a 60-year-old lady with vast experience in caring for children, to help with the transition. Lucy had raised 5 children of her own and worked as a nanny for high-society Arizona families for more than 20 years. "Mr. Theodore, the girl will need time to get used to it," advised Mrs. Lucy on the first day. "A child who's been through what she has doesn't trust easily. She'll test you several times before believing this is real." Mrs. Lucy was right. During the first weeks, Lily demonstrated a mixture of fascination and insecurity with everything around her. She ate as if each meal was the last, kept pieces of food hidden in her room, and frequently woke up during the night to check if she was still in the mansion. "She does this because on the street she never knew when she would eat again," explained Dr. Ryan Almeida, the child psychologist that Theodore had hired to accompany Lily. "It's a survival mechanism. With time and security, these behaviors will diminish." Theodore dedicated himself entirely to Lily's adaptation. He had delegated the daily administration of the company to his trusted managers, not Richard and Marcus, obviously, and spent most of his time at home. His mornings started early, preparing breakfast together with Mrs. Lucy, an activity he had never done in his adult life. "Lily, do you want scrambled eggs or an omelette?" asked Theodore, wearing an apron that Mrs. Lucy had insisted he buy. "Can I choose?" replied Lily, still impressed with the possibility of having options. "You can always choose. This is your home now." The afternoons were dedicated to studies. Theodore had hired private teacher Marissa Costa, a pedagogue specialized in children who had experienced trauma. Marissa was impressed with how quickly Lily absorbed knowledge. "She has a thirst for learning that I've rarely seen," commented Marissa to Theodore after a few weeks. "In 2 months, she has advanced the equivalent of a school year. Her concentration and memory abilities are exceptional." "It's because she never had the opportunity before," replied Theodore, observing Lily through the glass of the study room. "Now that she has it, she doesn't want to waste a single minute." But not everything was easy. Lily still had frequent nightmares, reliving the difficult years on the street. Sometimes she woke up screaming, and Theodore would run to her room to calm her. "I dreamed that all this was a lie," she confessed one night, trembling in Theodore's arms. "That I was still in the square and you didn't exist." "I exist, Lily, and I'll never let you go through that again." "Promise?" "I promise." These moments strengthened the bond between them intensely. Theodore discovered that paternal love was something completely different from any feeling he had ever experienced. It was protective, unconditional, and transformative. After 3 months in the mansion, Lily finally felt secure enough to make a special request. "Theodore, can I call you Dad now?" The businessman felt his eyes fill with tears. "Of course you can, my daughter." From that moment, the relationship between them changed completely. Lily began to act like a normal child. She ran around the house, played tricks, asked to stay up late watching movies. Theodore, in turn, discovered the joy of being a present and participative father. The weekends became special. Theodore took Lily to see places she had never seen: the zoo, the water park, shopping malls, cinemas. Each new experience was a source of enchantment for the girl. "Dad, why are there so many different animals at the zoo?" she asked during a visit. "Because the world is very big, Lily, and has animals of all types. One day, if you want, we can travel to see some of them in their natural habitats." "Really? Can we go to Africa to see the lions?" "We can go wherever you want." Formal education also began. Theodore enrolled Lily at St. Mary's Academy, one of the best private schools in Phoenix. Initially, there was resistance from some parents who questioned the presence of a former street girl in the same classroom as their children. "That child might have traumas, behavioral disorders," commented Paula Mendoza, mother of a classmate, during a parents' meeting. "Our children might be negatively influenced." The principal, Sister Bernadette, a wise 75-year-old woman, firmly rebutted, "Mrs. Paula, this child demonstrated more courage and character at 7 years old than many adults in an entire lifetime. If there's anyone who can positively influence other children here, it's her." Lily adapted well to school, but faced some social challenges. Some children treated her with excessive curiosity, wanting to know details about her previous life. Others kept their distance, influenced by their parents' prejudices, but she also found true friends. Sofia Martinez, daughter of a doctor, was the first to genuinely approach her. Lily, did you really live on the street? I did. And weren't you afraid? I was very afraid, but now I'm not anymore. Why? Because now I have a father who protects me. Sophia became Lily's best friend, and their families began to grow closer. Dr. Ricardo Martinez and his wife Carmen were impressed with the transformation they observed in Theodore. I've never seen such a radical change in a person, commented Ricardo during a dinner with the two families. The Theodore we knew was focused only on business. Now it seems he's discovered what really matters in life. Carmen agreed. And Lily is flourishing. It's impressive how a child can recover when she receives love and care. Theodore smiled, watching the two girls playing in the garden. Lily taught me that success isn't measured only in money. She gave me back the humanity I had lost. During that period, Theodore also made important decisions about his business. He created a social responsibility department in his company, allocating a percentage of profits to projects aimed at children in vulnerable situations. Additionally, he established an internship program for young people from underprivileged communities. "Why are you doing all this?" asked his minority partner Edgar Drummond during a meeting. "Because Lily showed me that there's an America that I completely ignored. I can no longer close my eyes to it." Theodore's transformation also caught the attention of national and international media. Business magazines published articles about the businessman who discovered purpose. Invitations for speeches and interviews arrived daily. In an interview for 60 Minutes, Theodore was questioned about his life change. "Mr. Reynolds, some people say your attitude is just marketing. How do you respond to these criticisms? Those who say that don't know Lily. When you look into the eyes of a child who saved your life without expecting anything in return, when you see the purity and courage she demonstrated, it's impossible not to be transformed. It's not marketing. It's humanity." The interview was seen by millions of Americans and generated a wave of solidarity throughout the country. Other companies began to follow Theodore's example, creating social programs and adopting more humane practices. Lily, who watched the interview beside Theodore, made an observation that deeply moved him. "Dad, are you helping other children? Like me? I'm trying, my daughter. Then they'll also have fathers like you? Some will, others will have loving families in other ways. What's important is that no child should go through what you went through." That night, as he put Lily to bed, Theodore reflected on the past months. His life had changed completely, and he couldn't imagine how he had lived before without that extraordinary girl by his side. "Dad, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, my daughter." "Are you happy now?" Theodore smiled, kissing Lily's forehead. "I'm the happiest man in the world, my princess. I'm happy too," she said, closing her eyes. "Very, very happy." As Lily fell asleep, Theodore remained for a few minutes watching her. That brave girl had saved much more than his life that day at the abandoned house. She had saved his soul, his purpose, his capacity to love. And now together, they were building a family based on true love, mutual gratitude, and the certainty that sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them. A year had passed since that hot afternoon in Union Square that changed two lives forever. The adoption process was finally coming to an end, and Theodore anxiously awaited the final hearing at the county courthouse in downtown Phoenix. Lily, now 8 years old, was unrecognizable, not just physically, but in her posture, confidence, and joy of living. The girl's transformation was impressive. Her hair, once tangled and dirty, now shone in well-cared-for curls. Her eyes, which once carried the weight of survival, now radiated the natural curiosity of a loved child. She'd grown a few inches and gained weight, losing that fragile appearance. That moved and worried everyone. "Dad, today you'll be my real father for real?" asked Lily during breakfast, nervously fidgeting with the navy blue dress that Theodore had bought especially for the occasion. "I'm already your real father in my heart, my daughter. Today is just a paper that will confirm what we already know. And if the judge doesn't like me?" Theodore stopped what he was doing and knelt in front of Lily, holding her small hands. Lily, look at me. It's impossible for someone not to like you. You are intelligent, brave, loving, and special. The judge will see this in seconds. Dr. Frank Matthews arrived at the mansion to accompany them to the courthouse. In recent months, he had become more than a lawyer for the family. He was almost an uncle to Lily and a true friend to Theodore. "Everything ready for the big day?" asked Frank, adjusting his tie. "More than ready," replied Theodore. "We're anxious to finally formalize what the heart decided a long time ago." The journey to the courthouse was silent but not tense. Lily observed the city through the car window, thinking about how her life had changed. Sometimes it still seemed like a dream to her, living in a big house, having a father who loved her, going to a good school, having real friends. At the courthouse, they were received by Dr. Carla Menendez, the social worker who had followed the entire process. She smiled when she saw Lily, proud of the girl's transformation. "Lily, you look beautiful. And how are your studies?" "Very well, Doctor." "Carla? I can already read entire books and I'm learning Spanish too. Dad said that one day we'll travel to other countries." "That's wonderful. And you, Mr. Reynolds, how are you doing as a father?" Theodore smiled, running his hand through Lily's hair. "It's being the best experience of my life. Lily teaches me something new every day." In the hearing room, Judge Dr. Anthony Taylor, an experienced 60-year-old man, known for his strictness but also for his sensitivity in cases involving children, presided over the session. He had followed the case from the beginning and had been impressed with the evolution of both. "Mr. Theodore Reynolds, during this period of provisional guardianship, you have demonstrated being a dedicated and responsible father. All reports are extremely positive," said the judge, leafing through the documents. "Thank you, Your Honor. Being Lily's father has been the greatest privilege of my life." "And you, Lily, how do you feel living with Mr. Theodore?" Lily looked at Theodore and then at the judge with the confidence she had developed over the months. "I feel very happy, Your Honor. Dad teaches me many things, takes me for walks, and never yells at me. He tells me he loves me every day. And do you love him too?" "Very much. He's the best dad in the world." Dr. Taylor smiled, touched by the girl's sincerity. In all his years as a juvenile court judge, he had rarely seen such a positive and genuine transformation. "Well, in view of all the favorable opinions and observing the evident bond between you two, I grant the adoption request. Lily Sanders, Reynolds officially Theodore Reynolds is your father, and you are his daughter." The gavel hit the desk, legally sealing what the heart had already decided months ago. Theodore felt tears freely running down his face, while Lily jumped into his arms, shouting with joy. "Now I'm Lily Reynolds!" exclaimed the girl, hugging her father with all her strength. "Now you're officially my daughter forever," replied Theodore, his voice choked with emotion. Frank dried his own eyes, moved by that moment he had helped to build. Dr. Carla also cried, happy to see such a beautiful ending to a story that had begun so difficultly. After the legal formalities, the family, now officially a family, returned home to celebrate. Theodore had organized a small party with the most important people in their lives. Mrs. Lucy, who had become like a grandmother to Lily, teacher Marissa, Dr. Ricardo Martinez and his family, Sister Grace from the shelter, and even Sergeant Charles, who had become a special friend. "This is a date that will always be special for our family," said Theodore during the toast. "A year ago, Lily saved my life. Today, we formalize that she saved much more than that. She saved my soul." Sister Grace, who had followed the entire journey, raised her glass of juice. "May God continue to bless this very special family. You are proof that true love can transform any situation." Sergeant Charles, still impressed with the turns the case had taken, added, "In 25 years of police work, I've never seen a story with such a beautiful ending. You give us hope that there's still goodness in the world." During the party, Theodore made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I want to share with you a project that Lily inspired me to create. We're launching the Lily Reynolds Foundation, dedicated to helping street children throughout the United States." Lily's eyes widened. "A foundation with my name, Dad?" "With your name, yes. Because you taught me that every child deserves love, care, and opportunities. We're going to build shelters, schools, training programs for families. We want your story to inspire real changes. News of the foundation spread quickly through the media. The story of Theodore and Lily had captured the imagination of the country, and now it was becoming a symbol of hope and social transformation. In the months that followed, the Lily Reynolds Foundation grew rapidly. Other businessmen joined the project, donating time and resources. Shelters were built in various cities, educational programs were implemented, and hundreds of children began receiving help. Lily, even though just a child, became a small ambassador for the cause. At foundation events, she spoke naturally about her experience inspiring adults and touching hearts. "I lived on the street and was very afraid," she said during a talk at a private school in Los Angeles. "But my dad taught me that every child deserves to have a family that loves them. That's why we're helping other children like I was." Lily's education continued to be a priority. She excelled in all subjects, especially in writing and mathematics. Her teachers frequently commented on her emotional maturity and her ability to relate well to all her classmates. "Lily has a wisdom that goes beyond her age," commented the school principal to Theodore. "She understands the value of things in a way that impresses. She never wastes food, always helps colleagues with difficulties, and has a genuine gratitude for everything." At home, the family routine had established itself harmoniously. Theodore had learned to balance work and family, delegating more responsibilities at the company to have quality time with Lily. Family dinners became sacred, moments when they talked about the day, made plans for the future, and simply enjoyed each other's company. "Dad, when I grow up, I want to work at the foundation with you," said Lily in one of these conversations during dinner. "It would be an honor to have you as a partner, my daughter. But you can choose any profession you want. What's important is that it's something that makes you happy. I want to help other children like you helped me. I want them to know that there's always hope." Theodore smiled, proud of the social awareness that Lily was developing. "You're going to do amazing things in life, I'm sure." During school vacations, Theodore took Lily to see other countries, fulfilling the promise made months before. They visited Disneyland in California, explored the safaris of South Africa, and visited the beaches of the Caribbean. Each trip was an opportunity for learning and strengthening family ties. "Dad, the world really is very big," said Lily during a safari at Kruger National Park, watching a group of elephants. "And there are many children who need help everywhere." "Right. Yes, my daughter. That's why our work is so important. When I go back to the United States, I want to tell my friends about everything I'm seeing. I want them to know how lucky we are." Lily's humility and social awareness continued. To impress everyone, even living in a reality of privilege, she never forgot her origins and always sought ways to help other people. 2 years after the official adoption, the story of Theodore and Lily was transformed into an autobiographical book that became a national bestseller. The royalties were entirely donated to the foundation, generating resources to expand the social programs even further. The book launch took place in a large bookstore at Fashion Square Mall in Scottsdale. Hundreds of people attended to personally meet the duo who had touched hearts throughout the country. "Lily, which part of the story do you like the most?" asked a journalist during the event. "I liked the part when I met my dad in the hospital and he held my hand. That's when I knew he was a truly good person." "And you, Mr. Reynolds?" "I liked the entire story because each part taught me something new about love and about life. But if I had to choose, it would be the moment when Lily called me Dad for the first time." The success of the book opened other opportunities. Hollywood showed interest in adapting the story for cinema, but Theodore and Lily decided that, if there was a movie, the profits would also go to social causes. At school, Lily had become one of the most popular students, not for her wealth, but for her captivating personality and interesting stories. Her friends frequently visited her at the mansion, where Theodore made a point of receiving them as if they were his own children. "Lily has the most polite friends in the world," commented Mrs. Lucy. "It must be because she chooses good people, just like her heart." At 10 years old, Lily received special recognition from the state of Arizona for her social contribution through the foundation. The ceremony took place at the state capitol, with the presence of the governor and various authorities. "Lily Reynolds represents the best in human beings," said the governor during the ceremony. "Her courage saved a life and inspired an entire generation to be more supportive." Lily, now older and more articulate, responded at the microphone. "I want to thank everyone who believes in our work. Every child deserves to have a family, food, school, and lots of love. That's what we're trying to do, give children what they deserve." That night back home, Theodore put Lily to bed as he had done every night since she arrived at the mansion. "Dad, do you regret anything?" "I regret having taken so long to find you," replied Theodore, kissing his daughter's forehead. "But maybe it was at the right time. Maybe I needed to go through that experience to be ready to be your father." "I don't regret anything. Not even having lived on the street, because that's where I learned to be brave." "You were always brave, my princess. It was your courage that brought us here." "I love you, Dad. I love you too, my daughter, more than you can imagine." As Lily fell asleep, Theodore reflected on the extraordinary journey they had lived together. From a traumatic kidnapping had been born a family based on true love. From an abandoned child on the streets had emerged a transformative force for the entire society. The story that had begun with screams of despair in an abandoned house had transformed into a symphony of hope that echoed throughout the country. Theodore and Lily